Everyone, please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the absence of clergy, let us bow our heads in a moment of silent reflection or prayer. Reading of the Journal.
In Senate, Friday, January 24th, 2025, the Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The Journal of Thursday, January 23rd, 2025, is read and approved. On motion, the Senate adjourned.
Without objection, the Journal stands approved as read. Presentation of petitions, messages from the Assembly, messages from the Governor, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, communications and reports from state officers, motions and resolutions. Senator Gianaris.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Please call on Senator Liu for an introduction.
Senator Liu for an introduction.
Mr. President, I rise to recognize iMentor NYC, a mentoring program that partners with 12 public high schools in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens, offering mentorships and invaluable guidance to primarily first-generation college students. Their work not only supports academic success, but also fosters personal development and prepares students for future challenges in their careers and everyday life. Since 1999, the program has helped over 40,000 students grow into professional and upstanding members of their community. I'd like to recognize the 13 students and iMentor staff here today for their hard work and ambition in creating the next generation of leaders. Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Liu. To our guests, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of this House. Please rise and be recognized. Senator Gianaris.
Next up, we have previously adopted Resolution 229 by Senator Krueger. Please read that resolution's title, and since Senator Krueger is in the midst of budget hearings, please call on Senator Mayer on the resolution.
The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 229 by Senator Krueger, memorializing Governor Kathy Hochul to proclaim January 27, 2025 as Holocaust Remembrance Day in the state of New York.
Senator Mayer on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with a particularly heavy heart this year that I rise to speak in support of Senator Krueger's resolution urging the governor to proclaim January 27, 2025 as Holocaust Remembrance Day in the state of New York. This has been an extremely tough 2-year period for those who are Jewish and those who are not Jewish, who stand in solidarity against anti-Semitism and hatred. In the face of rising anti-Semitism here in our own communities we represent and in this state, in the nation, and sadly in the world, it's absolutely essential that we rise and speak together with one voice in support of this resolution to commemorate this day. This day was established by the United Nations in 2005, and I'd like to read some of what they said at the time. Reaffirming that the Holocaust, which resulted in the murder of 1/3 of the Jewish people, along with countless members of other minorities, will forever be a warning to all people of the dangers of hatred, bigotry, racism, and prejudice. And among the things that they urged us to do is condemn without reserve all manifestations of religious intolerance, incitement, harassment, or violence against persons or communities based on ethnic origin or religious belief, wherever they occur. It's especially fitting this year, on the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi concentration and extermination camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau, that we stand together and we affirm our unity as one body. And we can't just speak together in here. Our job is to speak together outside of here. Our job is to speak up in our communities when we see anti-Semitism and hatred, as we saw only yesterday in the city of New York, in a restaurant in Brooklyn, And thank goodness so many of my colleagues rose to the defense. But we need to do that every time, and we need to do it not only in the face of anti-Semitism, but in the face of hatred. And I hate to say that this is a moment in Americans' history and the world's history where there are warning signs about the rise of hatred and anti-Semitism. This calls for our renewed vigilance and our determination to turn this away before it gets to a state that we cannot explain and cannot justify. So I hope all my colleagues will join me, not only supporting this resolution, but promising that they will speak up in their communities and as a state against anti-Semitism and hatred in all forms. I thank Senator Liz Krueger for always putting this resolution forward. This is not a resolution for only Jewish members. This is a resolution for all New Yorkers. I urge vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mayer. Senator Stavisky on the resolution.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Krueger and Senator Mayer. Yes, January 27th is the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the death camp at Auschwitz-Birkenau, where over 1 million Jewish people were murdered. But there's another date in infamy, and that is this coming Thursday, January 30th, which is the 92nd anniversary of the appointment of Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany. And in a sense, when we, as we should, commemorate the 80th anniversary, it's sort of like looking at a book and reading the last chapter first. It really began in 1933 with Hitler's accession to be chancellor, but it started a long time before that. It started much earlier, and as Senator Mayer alluded, it started when Jewish-owned shops were vandalized, when there were boycotts, when there were books that were banned and burned. And yes, we had an attack in Brooklyn on an Israeli restaurant a couple of days ago. That's how it started. And we are very concerned today that history does not repeat itself. In the words of the Spanish-American philosopher George Santayana, he said, to paraphrase him, if we don't learn our history, we're doomed to repeat the mistakes. And we are determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. There are attacks not just on Jewish merchants, not just on people, Asian American people who were subjected to slurs. This is really a story of hatred amongst everybody, attacks on everybody. And it's wrong, and as Thomas Jefferson, our third president, said, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And with this resolution, we hope to maintain eternal vigilance because it is the price of liberty. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kazaneri Fitzpatrick on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Mayer and Senator Krueger, for bringing this important resolution to the floor. As was stated, January 27th marks the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the concentration camp at Auschwitz-Birkenau. My dear friend Ellie Gross was a Holocaust survivor and told me the story with great trepidation of how she stated to me that she killed her mother. And I said, Ellie, how is that possible? And Ellie told me the story of when she arrived at Auschwitz, that there were two lines, and her brother was younger than her, and he was put on one line, and Ellie was a teenager, was put on the other line. And her mother initially was put with Ellie, And Ellie said, "No, Mom, my brother needs you more. You go with him." And it turned out that that was the line to the gas chamber. And Ellie lived with that horrible, horrible guilt her entire life. She took her experience, though, she survived being at Auschwitz and the horrors of being there, and then shared her story so that her family's horrific end was not in vain. She wrote books, she spoke at schools, she shared her story so that people would not repeat history, as we just said. Ellie was spared the fate of being sent to the gas chambers because she was old enough to be put to work, because that's how they valued life at that point. I can only imagine how difficult it was for her to speak about this, but she had the courage to speak out. Today reminds us of the horrors of the hatred and intolerance, especially in the wake of October 7th. And as we await the release of the remaining hostages from Hamas, we must stand united against all forms of evil and hatred. It serves as a reminder of our need to be vigilant and take decisive action to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hate and prejudice. So thank you again for allowing us to remember those who perished so that history does not repeat itself. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Weber on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the sponsors for bringing this very important resolution to the floor today. You know, Holocaust Remembrance Day is something that we really take at heart in Rockland County, being a very large and vibrant Jewish community. Most of the residents in my district have first-hand accounts or second-hand accounts of family members perishing during the Holocaust. We also remember the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camps. You know, today I rise to remember the 6 million Jews and millions of others who were murdered by the Nazi regime. Today, anti-Semitism is rising in America and around the world, and we must learn from history to ensure that something like this is never permitted to be perpetrated again. We also need more and more people on both sides of the aisle to speak up and to continually speak out against anti-Semitism. Notably, there was an incident of anti-Semitism in Brooklyn just this past weekend. I proudly represent, as I said earlier, a vibrant Jewish community in Rockland County, and we continue to honor those that were perished during World War II. So thank you for bringing this resolution forward, and thank you for my time.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hoylman-Siegel on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to thank Senator Krueger and Senator Mayer and Senator Savitsky for leading this very important resolution on Holocaust Remembrance Day. You know, what I think about, Mr. President, is the recent data on Holocaust denialism, which is spreading disturbingly across this country and across the entire world. There was an index on Holocaust knowledge and awareness that took into account a number of Western nations testing the population as to their understanding of this horrific of all crimes that happened. In the United States, it's good to know that 76% of all adults surveyed believe something like the Holocaust could happen today, because I think that awareness is so important. On the other side of the same coin is that the fact that Americans are so uneasy about anti-Semitism and bigotry and racism in all its forms, to think that the vast majority of Americans believe our democracy and our human rights are so fragile that the Holocaust might happen again, sends a very stark message, I think, to our fellow Americans. Nearly half, 48% of Americans, though surveyed, were unable to name a single camp or ghetto established by the Nazis during World War II. 28% of Americans thought that less than 2 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. We know that that number is by a factor of 3. 44% in the U.S. reported that Holocaust denialism across the United States was common, and 49% of adults in the United States reported that Holocaust distortion is widespread. In New York, I wanted you to know that 58% of New Yorkers can't name a concentration camp or ghetto, more than half. And 60% of New Yorkers don't know that 6 million Jews were, in fact, killed. And Mr. President, just last week, when an American official behind the seal of the President of the United States gave a salute that can only remind us of the Nazi horrors, and then followed up with a tweet where he openly mocked the Holocaust while serving as an American official. And of course, I'm talking about Elon Musk, is so disturbing that I think we all need to take this moment, this day, and resolve, each and every one of us, that we will work harder to combat anti-Semitism in all its forms. You know, my rabbi once said, the answer to anti-Semitism is to be more Jewish. And I take that to heart, but for Jews and non-Jews alike, and as we speak to our constituents, we must implore and impress upon them that we can never forget the horrors of that dark period, and we have to work to ensure that they never happen again. So thank you again to my colleagues for sponsoring this resolution, and let us all make certain that when we welcome the stranger to our shores, we keep in mind the USS, the St. Louis, the ship that was turned away from the shores of Cuba and Miami in Europe, where hundreds of Jews aboard that ship in 1939 were denied entry into the United States, and over a quarter of them ended up being returned to Europe and perishing in the camps. And again, that's a lesson for today when we see the news about potential raids on our own fellow New Yorkers who are seeking asylum in our state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Scarcella-Spanton on the resolution.
Thank you, and thank you to the sponsors for bringing this resolution and honoring those who were lost in the Holocaust. I have the privilege of representing the largest community of Holocaust survivors in the state of New York, and today and every day, I am in awe of their resilience. The stories that they have shared remain a somber reminder of the importance of reflecting on the horrors that they and their loved ones witnessed and experienced, and vow to let them never repeat. And I would be remiss not to mention that just last week in my district, there was a brutal attack of a taxi driver in Coney Island. They stole the Star of David necklace right off of his neck, and he was beaten, robbed, and later died in the hospital. Anti-Semitism is alive and well. It's horrifying, and we must never, ever forget. Many of the survivors have formed organizations to keep their history alive, and they support one another. I'm so proud that I'm able to support them, including the Holocaust Remembrance Association, led by my dear friend, Mr. Sam Bykov, the American Association of Invalids and Veterans of World War II, the Association of East European Jewry, and many others. These people work tirelessly to make sure that their history is remembered, their stories are shared, and that survivors have the resources and services that they need to support their communities. Thank you, everyone, for continuing to work to memorialize this part of our collective history, and I look forward to continuing to support our Holocaust survivors and making sure that we fight anti-Semitism in every way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Martins on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this resolution. You know, I believe the answer to anti-Semitism, Mr. President, is to be more human. For those of us who are not Jews, I believe that it's a question of humanity. We should all be more human and understand the horrors and the suffering of the systemic annihilation of 6 million people for no reason other than their religious beliefs. The hate that stands behind such an act is hard to understand, but it's important that we all sit here and we learn from it. And I would caution anyone from drawing comparisons. Because as you draw comparisons to modern day, I fear that in those comparisons, we actually minimize the tragedy and the horror of the Holocaust by using references to today, whatever those references happen to be. So let's understand that when 6 million people die because of systemic hate, that we as a world, one, obviously are cheapened by it, but also have an opportunity to ensure, and we say it time and again, never again. The United Nations General Assembly designated today, January 27th, as the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz and Birkenau as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. So we are here for that purpose. We all remember the horrors in Israel just 15 months ago. The hate behind that. We've all seen the demonstrations on our college campuses and across this country, I believe, motivated also by hate, misunderstanding, or just uneducated people who are allowed to lash out. It's hate. I don't want to hear about free speech in the context of hate. There is no such thing when we talk about the systemic annihilation of an entire group because of their religious beliefs, Mr. President. And so I want to thank the sponsor again for the opportunity not only to speak on this resolution, but to come together, both sides of the aisle, both reiterating the same important point today. Let's reaffirm our humanity, each and every one of us. Let's stop the comparisons for political purposes. Let's understand what's at stake here and what happened, and let's vow to never allow it to happen again under any circumstances. And we do not forgive hate or bad behavior under any circumstances. Mr. President, I'm happy to sign on to this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rhodes on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I too want to rise and thank the sponsors of this resolution for allowing us the opportunity to pause today and recognize the absolute horrors of the Holocaust, and to remind not just ourselves but all New Yorkers of our responsibility not just to remember, not just to educate, but also to act, and recognize that man's inhumanity to man did not just occur during the Holocaust, that we see man's inhumanity to man displayed in the acts that we witnessed in Israel on October 7th, the continued demonstrations of man's inhumanity to man as we continue to see hostages being held, separated from their families, but also what we see happening right here in our own state of New York, where we try to preach tolerance and understanding. It's a challenge for us not just to speak out today, but it's a challenge for us to act out today and every day to not only address things that are going on in our communities, but to take legislative action to address some of what we see. There are a number of bills that have been filed, certainly in the minority conference, giving judges the authority to require or deny bail for someone arrested for hate crimes, to deny state-funded tuition assistance to students that are engaging in anti-Semitic behavior, to require colleges to report anti-Semitic activity and provide anti-Semitic awareness and prevention training, to prohibit state funding for SUNY and CUNY and community colleges that permit terrorist organizations like Hamas on their campuses, to expand New York's hate crime laws to include people who trespass at a house of worship or protesters who obstruct traffic and restrict access to buildings, to increase funding for the Securing Communities Against Hate Crimes grant program and expand eligibility to include small businesses, and to ban deceptive face coverings at public protests to prevent those who commit vandalism or violence from hiding their identities to evade law enforcement. And as we gather together in a bipartisan way to remember the horrific acts of the Holocaust and to condemn anti-Semitism, let us also work in a bipartisan fashion to bring these pieces of legislation and others that have been filed to the floor to address some of the root causes of anti-Semitism and to keep our communities safer. Again, thank you to the sponsors of this resolution, and thank you, Mr. President, for being recognized.
Thank you, Senator. The resolution was adopted on January 22nd. Senator Gianaris.
Mr. President, I know that Senator Krueger would like to open that resolution for co-sponsorship.
The resolution is open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor, please notify the desk. Senator Gianaris.
There will be an immediate meeting of the Rules Committee in room 332.
There will be an immediate meeting of the Rules Committee in room 332. Senate stands at ease. We'll return to order. Senator Gianaris.
There's a report of the Rules Committee at the desk. Can we take that up, please?
Secretary will read.
Senator Stuart Cousins from the Committee on Rules reports the following bills. Senate Print 265 by Senator Harkam, an act in relation to directing the State Board of Real Property Tax Services to conduct a study on real property tax saturation. Senate Print 762A by Senator Claire, enactment of the Public Health Law. Senate Print 904 by Senator Gonzalez, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 1327 by Senator Parker, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 1329 by Senator Parker, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 1330 by Senator Parker, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 1701 by Senator Mayer, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 1847 by Senator Comrie, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 1896 by Senator Mayer, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 1966 by Senator Ryan C., enactment of the Public Department of Social Services Law. Senate Print 2124 by Senator Kavanaugh, enactment of the Tax Law. Senate Print 2182 by Senator Henchy, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 2668 by Senator Claire, enactment of the chapter of the laws of 2024. Senate Print 2669 by Senator Henchy, enactment of the Public Health Law. Senate Print 2670 by Senator Horman Siegel, enactment of the Real Property Law. Senate Print 2671 by Senator Baskin, enactment of the State Finance Law. Senate Print 2672 by Senator May, enactment of the General Business Law. Senate Print 2673 by Senator Salazar, enactment of the Correction Law. Senate Print 2674 by Senator Horman Siegel, enactment of the Criminal Procedure Law. Senate Print 2675 by Senator Fahey, enactment of the Public Health Law. Senate Print 2676 by Senator Bailey, enactment of the Insurance Law. Senate Print 2677 by Senator Martinez, enactment of the General Municipal Law. Senate Print 2678 by Senator Fahey, enactment to amend the Social Services Law. Senate Print 2679 by Senator Ramos, enactment of the Public Service Law. Senate Print 2680 by Senator Sanders, enactment of the Financial Services Law. Senate Print 3190 by Senator Kavanaugh, enactment of the Real Property Tax Law. All bills report direct to third reading.
Report of the Rules Committee.
All those in favor of accepting the report of the Rules Committee signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The report of the Rules Committee is accepted. Senator Gianaris.
Let's take up the supplemental calendar, please.
The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 141, Senate Print 904 by Senator Gonzalez, enactment of the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 6 is action to take effect on the 30th day after shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 141, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Ashby, Borrello, Kazari Fitzpatrick, Chan, Griffo, Helming, Lanza, Matera, Murray, Oberacker, O'Mara, Ort, Palumbo, Rhodes, Steck, Tedisco, Walzick, Weber, and White. Ayes 41, nays 19.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 142, Senate Print 1327 by Senator Parker, enactment of the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 30th day of shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 142, voted in the negative, Senator Walzick. Ayes 59, nays 1.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 143, Senate Print 1329 by Senator Parker, enactment of the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 143, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Borrello, Kazari Fitzpatrick, Griffo, Lanza, Martins, Murray, Oberacker, O'Mara, Ort, Robinson, Steck, Tedisco, Walzick, and White. Ayes. Also Senator Rhodes. Ayes 45, nays 15.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 144, Senate Print 1330 by Senator Parker, enactment of the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 30th day it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 144, voted in the negative, Senator Walzick. Ayes 59, nays 1.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 145, Senate Print 1701 by Senator Mayer, enactment of the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 8, this act shall take effect on the 90th day it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 145, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Ashby, Borrello, Kazari Fitzpatrick, Chan, Griffo, Helming, Martins, Matera, Murray, Oberacker, O'Mara, Ort, Palumbo, Rhodes, Rollison, Ryan C., Steck, Tedisco, Walzick, Weber, and White. Ayes 39, nays 21.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 146, Senate Print 1847 by Senator Comrie, enactment of the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 6 is act to take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 146, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Borrello, Kazari Fitzpatrick, Palumbo, Walzick, Weber, and White. Ayes 54, nays 6.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 147, Senate Print 1896 by Senator Mayer, enactment of the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect 1 year after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Senator Mayer to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to take the opportunity to read some of the emails I get every day. What exactly are you doing about Con Ed rates rising so rapidly? Senator Mayer, I know I represent most people when I discuss the exorbitant fees charged by Con Ed for delivery of our electricity and gas. It represents at least double the usage charge. What can be done about this outrageous situation? As we have no control over the delivery charges, we want to join you in making a change. Please advise if your office is undertaking any efforts to address the unsustainable delivery charges imposed by Con Ed and how we may support that effort. I would say that is 3 out of probably 20 a day that I receive in my office about the rates charged by Con Ed. What can we do? We can do something. We can change the methodology by which the Public Service Commission sets the rates for these utilities, which I would point out have a monopoly in New York State. Basically, they come in with a rate, the PSC says, no, you're a little too high, and they negotiate something in between. That is backwards. They should set a preferred rate. There should be a rebuttable presumption that that is the right rate. They are allowed to make a return, but not at the expense of our constituents who cannot afford to stay downstairs in their homes or except in a single room where the heat is on. It is absolutely unsustainable. The time has come for us to do something. This body passed this bill last year. I urge the Assembly to do the same, the governor to sign it. We need to do something and do it now. I vote aye.
Senator Mayer, to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 147, those senators voting in negative are Senators Ashby, Borrello, O'Mara, Ort, Palumbo, Steck, and White. Also, Senator Tedisco. Ayes 52, nays 8.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 148, Senate Print 1966 by Senator Ryan C., enactment of social services law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Senator Chris Ryan to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to my colleagues for the support of the bill. Just want to say during the first few weeks in Albany and for the months prior, certainly has been a concern I've heard from from many others, from my constituents, from advocates, from the budget we just heard about, and that issue is affordability. The people of New York are desperate for assistance to meet the cost of living, to pay for the simple things like putting food on the table, lowering the cost of health care, and in this instance, heating their homes. It's an honor that my first bill in this great House will be one that directly addresses this need and helps the most vulnerable of us stay safe during this arguably hard time in these harsh winter months. This bill requiring the automatic re-enrollment of households eligible for the Home Energy Assistance Program, known as HEAP, will take one worry off the minds of people who have enough to worry about. As we've seen in the last week or two, the drastic rise in demand for this program, this benefit is important now more than ever. I am very proud to pick up this bill from my predecessor, and I certainly hope to see it passed into law by the State Assembly and passed by the governor. So, and thank you, Majority Leader, for bringing this to the floor.
Senator Chris Ryan to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed.
I'd like to pause for a moment to recognize the first bill passed by Senator Ryan. Now, you might...
Calendar number 150, Senate Print 2182 by Senator Hinchy, enactment of the public service law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 180th day, shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed. Senator Gianaris, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Is there any further business at the desk?
There is no further business at the
I
desk.
move to adjourn until tomorrow, Tuesday, January 28th at 12 noon.
On motion, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, Tuesday, January 28th at 12 p.m.